Looking for a fun, different new shirt? Something related to the things you like? Climbing in the outdoors, perhaps philosophy? Visit our new store, The Dihedral Goods, on Etsy, and you'll find all that and much more.
I'm on!
Hi everyone, this is Gaia along with Carrot,
Hello.
welcoming you to another episode of the Dihedral podcast. Today we are joined by one of the most influential climate organizers. She has been awarded the Henry Arnold Fellowship, the Grace Fixer Award, and named Forbes 30 Under 30 for social impact. As founder and executive director of one of the most influential climate resources in the United States, Caroline Spears has brought a new level of organization, optimization, and hope for climate policy and reform with climate cabinet education. So some people dream about changing the world and some people actually go and do it. Caroline Spears does both, and we are beyond honored to have her on the show. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you for having me. It's really exciting to be here. And what a lovely introduction.
Of course. Okay, so just let's get started into the topic right away. Can you please tell us a little bit about Climate Cabinet and how listeners can take advantage of some of the resources, especially leading into the upcoming November 5th election?
Absolutely. So the November 5th election is at this point just a few days away. Ballots are already getting sent out in some of the most critical districts nationwide. And so what Climate Cabinet does is, if you're listening to this and it's October or November, you're probably getting a lot of political ads. It's really in the news. And it can feel very noisy. And what Climate Cabinet does is we take all of that noise and we simplify it. So we are Moneyball for climate policy. We find the highest impact races across the country for climate. And we endorse game-changing climate champions who are running for those districts nationwide.
Nice. So you just mentioned that you're like Moneyball for climate policy, etc. Can you please explain this approach? What does that mean?
Yeah, Moneyball for climate really is about two things. It's about climate impact and it's about a political window. So we know that especially this November, we have a lot of folks running for office, and we have a lot of cases where we have an incredible climate champion running against somebody who's a climate denier. And these are some of the most impactful races nationwide. And we see that at the national level, and we see that at the presidency. But in America, we elect over 500,000 people to public office every 6 years. There's a lot of folks out there, and they are running for utility districts. They are running for electricity districts. They're running for state legislatures nationwide. And so what Moneyball is we look through those 500,000 offices, so you don't have to, and we find the highest impact races across the country. So what that specifically, we look at two factors. We look when I say Moneyball, it means two things. It means climate impact. What is the climate impact of this race? If we win it, what is our ability to solve that person who wins that office? What is their ability to solve climate change? How many greenhouse gases are under their control? What are other environmental impacts of the office that they have? And then it's political window. So the first asks, is it worth it to get involved in this office for climate? And the second asks, can we win? So we look at political viability of the race as well and see if we can put a climate champion in office there.
That's really cool.
Nice. So essentially you help voters get educated, and then at the same time you help politicians get elected. Do you have any like success story that you recall that you can share, or anything in particular that comes to mind?
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about 2022. In 2022, we supported 60 candidates across the country. We won 85% of those races. Yeah. And that's over 500 million metric tons of CO2 per year controlled, which is more than most countries. So that's what they control now. Yeah. Of course, you can win an election, but winning the election is the first point. Now people have to actually pass policies to get stuff done. But we saw that happen. We saw states pass 100% clean electricity in Minnesota and Michigan. We saw folks build battery factories in their cities across the country. So that's really the impact that this has. And I think about one race that we had in 2023 was Luzerne County in Pennsylvania, a county with multiple Superfund sites, coal mining issues, a lot of environmental challenges. And unfortunately, that county board of supervisors had been taken over by people who could barely pass a county budget, much less come up with an environmental plan for all of these real serious environmental issues that make people sick in their community. And so we ended up, this is a county that there was a lot of ticket splitting. It had voted for Trump twice. It had voted for Josh Shapiro. It had voted for candidates of kind of all different persuasions. But we won 4 out of our 5 races in that county last year. Yeah. And some really incredible environmental champions.
That's so cool. I was hoping that I can give an example kind of how I use the website, and then you could explain a couple of things along the way so that people can really get a feel for how easy and accessible the website is. So for me, I usually use Ballotpedia in order to see like who is running in my district. And so I just picked a particular district. It's Texas House District 112. And we have Avery Bishop running against the incumbent Angie Button. So I noticed that on the website, Bishop is listed under our candidates. Can you explain what that means?
Absolutely. So if you go to the website, it's climatecabinet.org. You can see all of the incredible candidates we're supporting this year in 2024. We have over 200 candidates up on the website. We are our highest priority candidates. We found 172 of them nationwide. I bet that number changes a little bit between now and November because I bet we had a few more, but 170 as of this podcast. And one of them is Avery Bishop running in Texas. And so this is a perfect example of how we combine climate impact and political opportunity. This is a battleground district in Texas. And this is a district in the greater Dallas area where that political opportunity is really high. And Texas is a huge state. You know, Texas as one state has the same pollution as the bottom 20 states combined.
We believe you. Yes.
Where are y'all based?
Yeah.
We are in a suburb outside of Houston.
Just north of Houston.
Oh, amazing. Okay, I grew up in Houston.
Oh,
yeah.
There
Fantastic.
we go.
No, that's crazy. So they can see, all right, this particular candidate is supported. They're one of our cabinets. So I assume they went through some kind of a vetting process. Is it difficult to share that, or is that something easily to explain?
Not at all. And it's pretty easy to explain too. Our vetting process is simple. It is, can you win? And tell us your track record. Politicians talk a lot. They tweet a lot. They're on social media. They do all the things. We don't care about what they say. We care about how they vote.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when it comes, we look at voting record of anyone who applies for endorsement. Our endorsement process is really simple. You can actually, if you're super curious and listening to this, you can go to the website and see the endorsement form for yourself. It's public.
It's really cool. Like, it's fun to poke around with those things.
So go ahead and do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So go do it if you're so inclined. And basically the endorsement process asks, what have you done for your community on climate and environmental justice? And what has your opponent done for the community on climate and environmental justice? And then what we will also do is we will pull voting records that we have. Our data science team is 3 people. They're fantastic. And they categorize and pull together voting records so that we have a clear window into exactly what they've done for every major environmental vote. And in that specific race, Representative Andy Button has a pretty bad voting record on climate, on environmental issues, on environmental justice issues. And those are the things that we're really looking at. And the climate impact of that just can't be understated. Texas is a critical battleground for the climate fight.
No, that actually leads kind of to my next question. Maybe I could push you to expound a little bit more. So after I see Avery, then I go over and see how Button has done. Like, it's all right there. So you can see her climate cabinet score, and she has an F. And then it lists like what that F is based on. And so can you talk about those grades just a little bit so we know the difference between what a person with an A to an F actually is?
Yeah, an A score, it's really all about, okay, you're sitting in the state capitol, or you're sitting in the county commission seat. So if you can envision like the dais of whatever that looks like in your head, or the voting floor. And it's really, we are looking at what are candidates doing on building a clean energy economy and reducing pollution. And it really comes down to that. We will track any vote that they take on climate. So you can think of like the climate. I know one of the votes that we've looked at in Texas is prepping stormwater management for increased climate disasters. It can be like a climate resiliency plan. It can be 100%. So that's one, is literally the things that say climate in them. It can be something like, federally, we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which doesn't say climate, but it's a huge investment in building the clean energy economy that we need to solve climate change. So it's creating jobs, it's creating electricians' jobs, it's creating solar jobs, wind jobs, battery jobs. That's a huge part of our scorecard. And then anything related to pollution, and anything related to pollution also makes it onto that scorecard.
Okay.
So the kind of high level policy that people might think about a lot is like a greenhouse gas pollution standard. We're also looking at NOx pollution. We're looking at some of these other pollutants that really hurt people that are emitted at the same time as greenhouse gases. But it's also really important that we think about human health impacts. Our goal is to solve climate change, and our goal is to make people's lives better as we solve climate change. And that means stopping. We're currently dumping a lot of pollution into the same communities over and over again. And when we do that, we're making climate change worse as well. So those are kind of the three buckets of things that we're really looking at when we're like, how are you doing on climate?
Yeah. So just to verify this, anybody in any state in the United States can go on and they can see their incumbents in their district, both Senate and House, and see what their climate report card is from an A to an F. Like, people can do this right now.
Garrett, I wish we had full US coverage. That's absolutely a goal of ours.
Okay.
At this point, you can't look at every single district in America.
Okay.
But you can see many of them. And we are covering most of the US population right now. So yeah, it is a great resource. Unfortunately, we are missing some states. But if folks
For now.
reach out,
Yeah, for now.
for
We'll
now,
get there.
we'll get there. I'm
Yeah.
excited about it. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So
This is not like climate change is not we're going to pass one policy once in one place
We
and
won't.
like, all right,
Exactly.
we're done.
no, for sure. So I have kind of like a question in the reverse order. Is there anything that you can recommend to voters if the optimal choice doesn't win? So for example, there's this guy I looked up. I'm originally from Michigan. His name is Steve Cara. He's in Michigan's HD 36, and he has an F minus.
Goodness gracious.
That scares me. That aside, let's say somebody hypothetically like him wins, and I mean, I'm a climate advocate and I lived in this district. What happens next? Is the advice to just wait until the next election cycle? Is there something voters can do to try to motivate somebody with a preposterously low score to try and get better?
There's always something you can do. If you look up your representative, you're like, God, are they ever going to change? There's two things you can do. And two things we all should be doing. One, you got to go talk to them. Elected representatives, especially if you're thinking about Michigan House District 53, they rarely hear from their constituents. And so if you can be a constituent advocate and go in and say, climate is a big priority to me, talk me through your climate plan. That's a great conversation to have. And like, listen, I've done this personally. I grew up in Texas. Now I live in California. I've seen two very different versions of what this looks like when you have that conversation. This is Houston relevant. John Culbertson I remember going to a town hall with John Culbertson and just getting shut down completely because Yeah, because he's like before Representative Lizzie Fletcher won that seat, he was literally at the House shutting down dollars for clean energy investments in the district. He was cutting funding for public transit. He was cutting funding for rail. That's the type of person. But even talking to him raises the issue in the district. What it also does is you can do both of these at once. You can say, I'm going to talk to my representative and I'm going to find out if they are not at all moving, let me figure out who's running against them in the next cycle. And you can do both of those things at the same time. It's a democracy. We are allowed to vote for and pick our representatives. And what I would really recommend is talk to your representatives, reach out to them. They have phone numbers online. They have email addresses. You can go to town halls if they hold them. But also, as a voter in a democracy, we also have the ability to volunteer for, block walk for, donate to, use our time and our resources to support somebody else running for that district. So both of them are options, and both of them are always on the table every election cycle for all of us.
Yeah, that's a great response. Thank you.
And now talking about election cycles, we have this upcoming one. Are there any close races that you would like to highlight right now for voters in particular districts to be aware of?
Yes. And actually, we have an internal, so I talk about Moneyball and we have an internal data science tool. And so I actually just looked up Michigan State House District 36.
Yeah.
And this is actually a great example of climate impact plus political window. So let's talk about 36 really quick. Mm-hmm. The climate impact's huge. Michigan is a top 10 greenhouse gas emitting state from a climate perspective. It's also a state that just passed 100% clean electricity, which is really exciting, which is going to lower people's energy bills in the state. That's part of that. We're going to solve climate change and we're going to make people's lives better combo. Right. Love that combination. That's the Michigan House broadly overall, which is almost tied. And so who controls that House in November will determine whether we get any more climate policy, or if it flips, we won't get more climate policy out of the state until that for the next 2 years. So that's what's at stake in Michigan. It's pretty, there's a lot at stake in Michigan this year, and it's not just at the federal level. It also is thinking about things like, are we going to build more clean energy and lower people's electricity bills, or is that going to get stopped by an anti-climate state legislature? So that's true. Okay, so the climate impact is high.
Yeah.
But for this particular district, and we can win, we have a majority, we need to keep that majority. That's the goal in Michigan this year. Yeah. This district is an R+16.
Oh, that's...
So
wait, so
we're not going to flip this district.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying.
The policy that you were mentioning about clean energy and then reducing the electricity bill, it's essentially hanging on by a thread.
It won't get repealed because we have the governor and the Senate.
Okay.
But it is the ability to kind of build on that and make future progress.
Okay.
Next 2 years.
And if we lose there.
Yeah.
Okay.
The weird thing about talking about states is it always gets so wonky all the time. And so I try to keep it like not at that level. But basically, not every election happens every year. And so there are 3 things to think about when you care about any state. You should be thinking about the governor, you should be thinking about the Senate, and you should be thinking about the House. Mm-hmm. And when you have all 3 of those being pro-climate, you pass something like 100% clean. When you lose one, all of a sudden you can't make any future progress. We can't keep our progress going, but we have the other 2 holding us. And that's the state that Michigan is in right now. If we lose all 3, that's when we get into the point where people are like, oh no, that's when we really go back. So that's how we're thinking about it. I'm actually going to try to drop, here's our little, for those of you listening, you can go to our website and see our candidates. And we're going to start publishing more and more data snapshots of, if you're on our newsletter, for example, you can get more and more data snapshots from us about kind of the Moneyball side of it as we head to the election. On this call, I just dropped one in the chat that's this district, which is, it's a pretty red district. So if you're in this district, talk to your representative and also figure out who in your community can you be organizing to change.
And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes too. So if anybody's listening, you'll have a link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it actually goes in line with the upcoming question that I had. So for the listeners who want to get involved and want to participate or help in any possible way, are there any resources that you could recommend for people? For example, for us, we tend to do cleanings, or we collaborate with Access Fund when we do donations and stuff like that. But beyond that, sometimes it can be overwhelming because you don't know where to start, what is actually impactful, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have any recommendations, we'll gladly take them as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Right now, the way to think about the next couple weeks before the election is, if you want to get your candidate elected, the pro-climate candidate elected, the best thing to do over the next few weeks is to go talk to voters. So what you're going to do is you're going to go look up your state legislator, your state senator, your state house. You're going to reach out to them, get on their email list, and start going to their events. The way to think about Get Out the Vote or GOTV or talking to voters over the next couple weeks is, people make it really complicated. It's not that complicated. You're going to go to the website you can go to the congressional website, you can go to the Senate website, whatever website of the person who's running in your district, go to the Harris Walz campaign, figure out how to volunteer. And I get the question all the time, where can I be most impactful? And the way to think about, if you care deeply about the climate outcome of this election, you want to convince 100 other people in your community to vote for the pro-climate candidate, it's pretty simple. The more personal the interaction is, the more likely somebody is to cast a vote.
Yeah.
The more likely you are to be able to persuade them to cast a vote for the pro-environmental candidate. So the best thing you can do is talk to people you already have a relationship with. Text them, make sure everybody's registered. Registration deadlines are coming up pretty soon in a lot of states. Got to make sure everybody in your life is registered. Make sure that they get their ballot, they know where their polling location is. And then what's also good, but like a lot less personal, is something like a phone bank or texting, where you're like phone banking or texting. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities, but it's less personal. The point is, you got to talk to voters who vote.
Yeah.
And the more personal you make the interaction is, the better your chance of persuading them to go vote. So that's just it. People add a lot of complication, but it's not that deep. It's not that complicated. You have to talk to voters who might not vote, but because you talk to them, they will now vote. You know where those voters are not, is they are not on 538.com. They are not doom scrolling Facebook. They are not doom scrolling Twitter. Voters are not there. So if you're spending a lot of time there, this is the call to log off, log out, and go talk to people in real life who we need to convince to win this election for us.
That's great advice.
I have a quick question now, listening to you, because of course you're very passionate about the topic. This is a topic that you have mastery in. I wonder, is there any particular legislation that you're excited about or looking forward that you're championing of?
Yeah. Listen, I'm not going to compete with you said you had a philosophy professor on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have. Exactly.
Okay, you've had one. I'm not going to compete with them, but the way to think about this election is very two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Like, we are going two different pathways. And I want to talk about the positive vision of that pathway. So, and I'm not going to talk about the presidency because ink has been spilled, but let's talk about what we can do. If we re-elect the folks in Minnesota who they got elected and they passed 100% clean electricity in 3 weeks.
So crazy. It's amazing.
That's called impact.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. And their elections for the state legislature are really tight this year.
Okay.
So we have another case of they can keep going on that progress. They can keep showing the nation what a model for climate leadership looks like. Or we can have 2 years of infighting because the Democrats who passed 100% clean electricity lost chamber, and they will stall out for 2 years. We don't have time to stall out. This is the climate
No.
crisis. We don't
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
time to stall out.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
that's
2
what's at
years is a
stake.
long time.
2 years is too much time. It's too much time for
Yeah.
the people of Minnesota. It's too much time for the people of the US. And we really need that leadership from states across the country. Okay, so that's on defense. I'm going to say one defense and one, let's go on offense on climate.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, here's the offense play. In Arizona, very sunny state. Fewer solar jobs than the state of Massachusetts, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
That's bananas. I
It's-
agree.
It's like, it's bananas. And
Yeah.
it's all because of state policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting too. When you spend some time on the website, you look at, and I can't say for sure if it's Massachusetts, but there's one state up in the Northeast where it doesn't seem to be split on party lines. Like you have as many Republicans who tend to score much lower on the report card than Democrats. In that one particular state where it's just like you can't tell who's a Democrat or Republican because they have very high scores in that state. And it's one of those things that is frustrating for me when this is an issue that's split on party lines. It's bonkers. But yeah, it's something that you can look at. You don't have to have identity politics when it comes to climate change, I guess is the points that I'm trying to make.
I totally agree. And that's why I really try to talk about pro-climate or anti-climate. I think we have to hold two truths in our head at the same time when it comes to partisanship and climate. The first truth is none of us want this to be partisan.
Right.
It is, we're all frustrated with it. We don't want it to be there. And some points that I would make in that bucket are, how long has Illinois had Democrats in office? A long time.
Yeah.
But they passed their clean energy job just at the same time as everybody else.
Mm.
You know, it's not like, Democrats, no matter what, will always be pro-climate. That just isn't true.
Yeah.
We have to do work to make sure that we are protecting the future and we are preserving the environment and we are solving climate change and we are making people's lives better when we do it, no matter what people's party is. The second piece is it is polarized and we're not getting climate legislation out of Republican governments right now. That's just true. And Arizona is a great case of that. The New York Times wrote an article a couple years ago that said 80% of the Republicans in the Arizona state legislature are election deniers.
Oh, okay.
If you're
Tough
an
place to
election
start.
denier, tough place to start, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like, if you're an election denier, are you going to be like, they're also climate deniers.
Yeah.
It's not really. So if like people are living in a conspiracy theory land, they're not going to help us pass climate policy. And that's just where we are. And so it is true that when we elect Democratic trifectas, they pass 100% clean. And when we lose those trifectas, they try to, the new Republican majority at this point in time tries to take us back. And that's where we are right now. And I think we have to live in both worlds. We have to live in the world where we are, but also say, let's plan and let's not just hope for, but let's plan for a future in which this issue isn't so partisan all the time.
Yeah.
And we have to live in both places at once.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
this is an issue, a topic that affects us all.
Yeah.
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 And
So-
voters know that. When I say Republicans and Democrats, I'm not talking about voters.
Right.
When you poll Republican voters, they also know that most of them know that the planet's getting warmer. If hunters are seeing changes in populations, in hunting populations, farmers know that the climate is changing. Like, clean energy polls really well among Republicans too. It's not the problem of the voters. It's not the person next door to you. It's the politicians that are the problem. There's this big gap, not just on climate, but a few issues in society right now where the voters are all on board with the policy and our politicians are failing us. And you can see that with gun violence.
Yeah.
Nobody wants gun violence. There was a shooting recently in a Georgia school.
Yeah.
Like, no one wants school shootings.
Right.
But the politicians aren't passing policy. The same as with climate. Like, people want action on climate. It's been shown in poll after poll after poll, and the politicians are the problem. So that's why Climate Cabinet exists, is we said, okay, our focus is to build a political engine for politicians to to get in, honestly, for politicians to meet the American people where the American
Yeah.
people already are on this issue.
So I have one question. You can just start coughing if you don't want to answer it.
Oh,
It's
good.
more of a personal question, but
Oh, no.
I couldn't do what you do because you have an ability to stay professional with something that's very emotional. So when I hear somebody who I know, because you can look and see what lobbyists are giving to certain people who adamantly deny climate, but yet you have to talk about this with a subdued perspective because anger loses people. So I was wondering if you have like meditation practice. You don't have to tell us anything you say behind closed doors, but how do you keep so like calm and collected in such high stakes, high emotional situations?
Because I know that I'm taking action. I think that's the only remedy for me is if I am not taking action on an issue, whether that's climate, which is now my full-time job, but there are issues affecting my local community that I'm going to local city council events on. You know, there are other issues beyond climate that I'm active on. And I find that the more that I can show up to a town hall or go hear someone running for city council speak about another issue facing my community, or on climate, my capacity for thinking about that issue grows. If I am on the internet and I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter, my capacity for actually taking action shrinks almost to zero. It's not a fun space. It's not a place that makes people say, let's solve this.
Yeah.
It's a space that gives people anxiety. And so I am, and it's not perfect. I'm always trying to improve, but I'm always trying to put myself in the spot of, it is really upsetting to see a lot of homelessness on the streets, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to do is I have the places I know around the city who host a lot of events to talk about issues, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to that city council town hall next week that's going to talk about homelessness. And I'm trying to give a homelessness example because that is a big issue facing society.
Yeah.
And I work in climate, so I'm like, this is what I do. If your full-time job isn't climate and the state of American politics, this is my best corollary.
Yeah.
For this isn't my full-time job, but I still want to be an engaged citizen. And the more I go to events like that, the more I meet people who are really working hard to solve this, the more I'm hearing issues, the more I'm talking and actually meeting people in community instead of being, and that increases my ability to stay sane and also take action. It's kind of a virtuous circle where you take one little volunteer step and that actually increases your capacity to think about these issues. But if you spend time on the internet, it decreases that capacity.
Great.
The internet's a place
Yeah.
of.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's good. It's smart because social media is not necessarily representative of what's actually going on in the world. It's just carefully curated content to stir issues up or just to deviate you from what's actually going on. So it's very smart and mature of you to have recognized that that is detrimental to your process and just put it aside because social media is highly addictive and it can really blur the lines of reality sometimes. So I admire you in
Great
that
advice,
regard.
yeah.
How do y'all think about this with the blog, the podcast? Like, you know, how does that factor into the work that you guys do?
It's somewhat problematic, to be honest, because we don't spend a lot of time on social media, and so the place where people are just like likes and all those things,
Yeah.
we don't overly compete with that, and so we've tried to grow very organically by, it's not exactly like canvassing a town hall or something like that, but just by talking with people in our community who share it with their community, and eventually we have a following in Portugal or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's organic growth, and I think that means, and I think there's an overlap here with what we're talking about. It's organic growth and it's sustaining. It's not just a like and I'll never see you again. It's
Yeah.
people who come back and tend to listen over and over again. So yeah.
I feel that. Yeah. It's always fun to meet people in the space who are inventing and creating, and it's another thing that really brings joy is yeah, meeting people in the space who are doing similar stuff.
For sure.
And now, when you were mentioning that, I have to say, not to demonize, or is that how you pronounce it?
Demonize.
Social media, because it's a great resource, but you just need to know how to properly use it, I guess, would
Yeah.
be the
And just
disclosure,
know.
disclaimer there.
Yeah, like I'm on Twitter, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on social media apps. But just know that
Yeah.
if you want to solve that, it's going to diminish, it's going to actually, the part in your brain that has the ability to take action, social media takes that part of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you can spend that time any place you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the more of it you spend on social media, the less you have to spend it on things that move. No one's ever won an election in a YouTube comment section.
Yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah.
sucks productivity. and
Yeah. Although
creativity.
YouTube comment sections can be funny sometimes.
Sometimes they're funny.
Very
I
sad.
just read them and I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So now on a lighter note, now that we're wrapping up, you're from Houston. So do you have any particular place, we love food, that you could recommend us or any visitors?
Okay, the problem with growing up in Houston and then moving literally anywhere else in the United States, and I'm including New York City, I'm including Los Angeles, like come at me, everybody who lives in those cities,
Yeah.
is that Houston has the best food in the country. And the problem is you travel anywhere else and it's not as good as Houston. I love Mala Sichuan. They have a place on Westheimer. Have y'all been?
No, but
No.
we're happy that we're recording this because
Yes.
like these are places we're going to definitely visit.
Yeah, and then all of the Viet Cajun restaurants in Houston are some of my favorites.
Yeah.
Those are kind of scattered throughout, but especially on the west side of the city, Viet Cajun
Okay. And what's the
are
name
my
of the
favorite.
first one that you said?
It's called Mala Sichuan, Mala.
Oh, we might visit that today.
Picking our son up from school and going there.
Yeah.
So Mala, Sichuan.
Yeah. And they have a few locations. They've grown a lot, which has been really exciting. They're this great couple. Here I dropped the.
Oh, that's so
Perfect.
nice. Thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, they have a Montrose, they have a Heights, and they have a Sharpstown. They started in Sharpstown and then kind of moved out and have expanded since then. But they're
Okay.
fantastic. How do y'all feel about like Sichuan spicy food?
The best. I love it. It's so good.
What are
So
your
after we go, we'll follow up with you. Like, we tried this.
You're right. This was amazing. Good
Yes.
call.
Yeah, what are your recs, Houston recs for people visiting?
So we're a little bit north of Houston, so we don't get out there as much as we'd like to, but there's this place, this pizza place that opened in the last 3 years called the Gypsy Poet, which has got like outstanding reviews. So I think that would be my recommendation. I love pizza. It's maybe the best thing ever. Maybe I don't know. I love it
Yeah.
so much. But it's called, the Gypsy Poet. It's amazing.
What's the name of this place? I don't remember the name, so I'm gonna have to like follow up with that and then plug it in, edit it and plug it in. But they sell vegan food and it's in Houston too.
Chef Kenny's.
Oh yeah,
it's so
and
good.
Bel-Air,
Yeah,
like toward the Bel-Air section, everything's vegan. They have vegan sushi, vegan everything, and it's so good.
Oh, if ever you're back, like you have to go. It's so good.
I love that. And the like on the complete other side of the spectrum, Shipley Donuts are the best donuts.
That's so
We have one very close
yeah,
to
it's
our
like 2
house.
minutes away. Yeah, that's awesome.
They're just the best. Like
It's easy
I
to
don't
get
know what
random,
Krispy
right.
Kreme is doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right?
Such a good restaurant scene. Yeah.
Okay, so before we leave, do you have anything else that you would like to plug in or share with people, or you think people should know, be aware of?
The last thing I would say is really the next couple weeks on the election are all going to be very focused on November 5th. But climate change doesn't start or stop on November 5th. This is an ongoing situation an ongoing project that we are all going to solve together. And so when you think about getting involved, it's not just about one election on November 5th. This is about knowing who your electeds are, getting involved with communities that can help you lobby those electeds over time, and volunteer for them if they're doing great on climate. Figure out how you can help them in this election cycle and in the next. And if they're terrible on climate, who else is running? Who else can you give yourself the opportunity to vote for and actually get excited about on climate? And so we have this election on November 5th. The next elections are in March. Many cities in Texas, the elections are in March and April of next year. And so Virginia and New Jersey state legislature elections are next year. And this is about we are building for the future, and this is about how we build towards that future. And it doesn't just stop this year. It's about building forward. And out of those 500,000 people that I mentioned who hold elected office in America, and we elect every cycle in America, we need as many of them to be climate champions as possible. And for international listeners, that goes internationally as well. So figure out how to get involved on the policy and political front. And it's not just something that happens on November 5th. We've got we've been working on this for a few years. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
This was enlightening. It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on.
Climb on!